this is going to be crazy to say it, to all of our problems on planet Earth. The hyperpolarization, what's going on with, in Minneapolis right now, what's going on in the Middle East, the solution, so like James Carville said, it's the economy stupid with Clinton. We say, it's development stupid. Why are we fighting? Because we haven't yet developed to a place where we have anything in us but the fight.
Welcome to the Your Seat at the Table podcast with your hosts, Idea Monkey Mike Maddock and ringleader John Tobin. We're two founders, a serial entrepreneur and a billion-dollar operator, to talk to leaders about how, when, and why they made their most pivotal decisions in life. Join us as we share wisdom, mistakes, and a few laughs learning from the brightest minds in business today. Hey, welcome to the Your Seat at the Table podcast. It's a great day because today John and I have a very good friend, Rand Stagen, as a guest. Rand, I'm going to say it. I call you a mentor behind your back. I'm sorry you have to carry that burden with you now. I've learned a ton of things from Rand, as have hundreds of my friends. So you're a leader among leaders, Rand, and it's an honor to have you here.
Great to have you, Rand. And
Yeah.
I'd say, Mike, for my standpoint, not just me, not just some of my friends, but literally thousands of slalomers have learned because of Rand. So it is awesome to have you here.
Well, thank you all for the invitation, and looking forward to seeing where the conversation takes us.
So, Rand, you're a fellow entrepreneur, you're a starter, and now you're in the middle of finishing stuff. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background and tell us how you got to where you are today?
Sure. At the highest level, I identify as an entrepreneur, like the two of you. I started out with founding a publishing company in college at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, where I published a Greek phone directory for the fraternities and sororities, and an underground newspaper that I sold ads and printed the paper and distributed it. Continued doing that after college and started a city paper that was partnered with a national network of alternatives, from the Village Voice in New York to the LA Weekly on the West Coast, and basically spent my 20s in the publishing business with magazines and newspapers.
Huh.
During that period, I was 23 years old. I'd raised my first round of financing with a limited liability partnership, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I was just lucky to have met a gentleman who told me he was an executive coach. And I was like, this was in the 90s. I was like, what's an executive coach? And he's like, well, I work with entrepreneurs. We meet every 2 weeks, and I'm a sounding board, and I bring best practices, and I help unlock the potential of my clients. And I was like, I had $2 million and a $2 million payroll. I was in my 20s. I had 35 employees. I was 23, and I was like, sign me up. And so for 8 years, every 2 weeks, I met with this coach. And then when we sold the media company in 1999, I had the opportunity. I was just about to turn 30 years old, and I said, what do I ultimately want to do? And I said, I want to get on the other side and help entrepreneurs and business leaders level up their game the way that I was able to receive that. And so in 1999, the Stagen Leadership Academy was founded, and thanks to clients and partners like both of you, we've had the opportunity over the last 26 years to grow into a physical brick and mortar facility in Dallas, where hundreds of senior executives fly in from all over North America to work in cohort-based programs. And then we have thousands, as John talked about, participants in our programs that are delivered off campus. And so we work with about 3,000 to 4,000 leaders every year in practice-based, very intense, high accountability programs. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that you went to SMU. I'd forgotten that. And now
Hmm.
you have a professor in the house, I
Now
understand.
I'm married to a professor. My wife is a professor at SMU Law School, and as Mike knows, I'm very jealous because she has a nameplate. They call her Professor Stagen, and she's got her JD, so she's earned that. But I don't yet have the moniker Professor Stagen. So
Yeah, you've been trying to buy your way in,
I have
basically.
been
So
trying
yeah.
to, whatever it takes. I've been trying to figure out how to make that happen. I'm still in pursuit.
I believe
Rand,
in your dream, Rand.
who was the executive coach that sort of mentored you and or gave you the inspiration there?
Yeah, so his name is Brett Thomas, and he ended up coming in for all intents and purposes as a co-founder within the first 18 months of the business, and he brought of the Stagen Leadership Academy because we were so close. And
Mm,
I said, Brett, I can sell, I can market, I can package because I had that background,
yeah,
but I didn't have curriculum design, I didn't
yeah.
have an understanding of adult developmental theory, and so he came in and as an incredible compliment to me, and was a partner in the business for the first 10 years, and we're still very close friends, but chose to go and do more creative pursuits. But yeah, Brett and I, we're the origin of what is now Stagen.
So those of you who might not know that are listening, as Rand said, it's very practice based, and I think when you think of that, there's many different modules and many different things that are very concrete and very distinct about how you go about learning these different these different practices, and then you go through a ritual and do them. So, two questions. Number one, what are some of the, I guess, the practices that you've learned and then taught to others that really stick with you the most? I know I have mine in my head. Um, and then I think the other question is, do you still do it? Like, do you still do some of the rituals, journaling, things like that? And if you're like in a very
Tell the
honest
truth,
moment,
Rand. Tell the truth.
all the Stagen alumni are going to hear this. So,
Yeah,
um,
there's
putting you
tens
on the
of thousands
spot.
of people out there that are on the edge of their seats wondering. So the uh, the joke in the community, let's call myself a practitioner. So is that we teach what we most need to learn, right?
Mm,
And so the answer would be I'm constantly in my practice because the more I'm practicing, the more aware I become, and the more aware I become, the more I realize how far I still have to go. And so, if you want to know how much practice I still have left, talk to my wife and talk to my daughters, and they'll
mm,
tell you because they're like, no, he's definitely got a long way to go. And it was I was talking to a CEO this morning before this call, and we've been deploying some 360s to his senior executives, and he said, our CFO is going through the 360 process. What's the best practice for whether we should have our board, which the CEO reports
mm,
to the board for board updates and board presentations? Should we have our board give feedback on this executive? And I said, absolutely not. You
mm,
don't want 360 feedback for those that don't know through a 360. This is just doing an online survey to ask people, Mike's had them done, John's had them done, how do you experience your leader? How do you experience your colleague? It could be a peer version of feedback. It could be from the tops, from supervisors, or it could be from those that are underneath you. And so that 360 view gives us a sense of how people are experiencing us. And I said, the problem with any CFO in a board is that the CFO is always working to bring his best self for the board. So the board sees the best of the CFO.
mm,
The board doesn't see the true CFO. And
mm,
so I was saying to my client, we want to be around people who will bring out the worst in us, which seems completely counterintuitive. Why would you want to be around people that bring out the worst in you? Well, when you're around people that you find yourself frustrated, irritated, um, and defensive, reactive, that's feedback
Yeah.
that you have no other way to be in relationship to that moment with that
mm.
person than to be reactive.
Hmm.
And
That's
so
yeah.
so I'm all about, John, staying in the dojo and continuing to work, and I am looking to find relationships and to find situations where I'm out over my skis because that's my edge. That's my growth edge.
That's the paradox, isn't it? Like we have these executive teams and we have these peer groups. And if you like what you hear from all of them, it's probably the wrong group because they're not holding up a mirror to your flaws. They're not calling your baby ugly. And so
Yeah.
it's this a really difficult challenge for leaders. They build teams, and just when they're happy with their team, it's time to change it again because everybody's become really close and they've developed their and reinforced blind spots. What do you
That's
think
right.
about that, Rand? Does that sound familiar?
Well, I mean, that's the big critique of ChatGPT and AI is
Yeah.
that it tells us, as we all know,
Mm.
it's like it tells us what we want to hear. It tells us how great we are. It tells us what a
Mm.
smart question that was. It tells us that's a really good question, Rand. Like, let's talk about that. And then we keep talking if I'm using the audio version, and I find myself like building this great rapport because all it's doing is playing back how great I am.
Yeah.
And part of what we know about adults and adult development, because this is a little bit academic, but our work, people say, what do you do? Well, we help leaders grow so those leaders can grow their businesses, right? Our philosophy, our theory of change is that companies don't change, companies don't grow, people change and grow. So if you want to see a business transform, you gotta actually create the conditions for the people leading and operating that business to transform. So that's our simple logic. And when we think about, well, how does growth happen? And this is the beauty of the research. We draw upon the research from Harvard from Robert Keegan, who ran the adult development department there for 40 years, and we've been fortunate to interact directly with him. And we have faculty that have worked, for and around Keegan for decades. And Keegan has said that growth happens because of two things, because there's a condition where there's support, that's more of a feminine coaching energy, and there's challenge, that's more of a masculine energy. And so it's through the
Hmm.
skillful combination of support and challenge. You don't want to have too much support because then if you were like a pressure cooker, you don't want to have the temperature down too low it doesn't, whatever's in the pressure cooker doesn't cook. But you also don't want too much challenge because then it could overcook. And
Mm.
so it's as parents, this is what we try to do. We try to create the conditions for that optimal discomfort, for that productive growth. We go to the gym, John, you're asking about practices. You go to the gym and work out. You want to work out to the point where your muscles are a little sore because you're actually growing. But if you push too hard, you could injure yourself. But if you don't push enough, you're not going to get the growth. You're going to stay in the comfort zone. And so support and challenge
Mm.
are the key. And the last piece on this, because you guys know I love quotes. It's one of my hobbies. The old Oscar Wilde quote around, Mike, what you said, that true friends, you talk about a seat at the table and you talk around being with people who have different perspectives, but also people who have perspectives that they're willing to share in service of your growth, even if it requires being unpopular. And it's the Oscar Wilde quote: "True friends stab you in the front." You know,
Mm.
true friends stab you in the front. It is sometimes an act of love to tell someone what they don't want to hear, but what they need to hear.
Mm.
And that's hard in the dynamic that we all live in when you want to get along and go along, but that's not where the growth is.
Mm.
What you just said reminds me of something one of your mentors said to me one day, Rick Voren,
Yep.
who is the chairperson of Stagen. Yeah, is that
He's the
his?
chairman, he's the Jedi, he's
Yeah.
my mentor, and I'm doing my best to try to bring bits and pieces of his wisdom into this conversation.
So here's the quote. And I'll channel my Rick Voren. He's like, Mike, I hear you complaining. In my experience, when I hear leaders like you complaining, only two things are going to make them change. Either you have a vision of the future that is so compelling, I mean, so compelling that nothing, I mean, nothing is going to keep you from reaching that vision, or you're tired of suffering. So I have a
Yeah.
question for you, Mike. Do you have a vision that's going to pull you forward, or are you through suffering? Because unless you can answer yes to one of those
Hmm.
questions, ain't nothing going to change. And I'm like, "Ah!"
Yeah. Yeah. Being
That's
being being confronted with timeless wisdom is often very uncomfortable. Yeah.
he's so great, as
Yeah.
are you.
Hey, with that, Rand, I think that might be an interesting thing to talk about your business, like as you started. So you had some successful papers. That it doesn't seem like a trivial thing to get going, although maybe for you it just sort of naturally flowed from college to the city and whatnot. But like starting the business, how did you get people um to do this? And was that what was the year again? And was leadership development like popular at that point? Like it became very, very popular, I suppose. But maybe just bring us back to like the beginning stages, and were you ever nervous about it, or boy, did it just flow? And I kind of know some of the answer to, some of the how the pipeline kind of got in a little bit, but maybe for everybody. And then I eventually want to talk to like some of the big plateaus. Like maybe you hit a plateau. I know you and I spend a lot of time like either over drinks or coffee, and me challenging you a little bit on
Oh
growth and
yeah.
stuff.
Oh yeah. I
So I just
remember.
I want to talk a little bit about your business and just how you started, and how did that go to start anyway.
Yeah, and I was at I started the publishing company in, for all intents and purposes, let's call it 1990, 1991, 1992. That was my sort of sophomore, junior, and senior years in college. I graduated in 92, and then continued doing the university publications at one other college called University of North Texas here in
Yeah.
the region near
Yeah.
SMU. And then during a couple of years of continuing post college publishing, I was raising money. And so I was 21 years old. I went to a lawyer and I said, I want to raise money. And he said, well, you're going to need to put together a memorandum. I was like, why do I need to do that? Like, I got people, I can just like, can I just like get money from them and put it in the bank? And he taught me about securities law. And I was like, so naive. I had no idea what I
Yeah.
was doing. I would say that I was relentless, John. I was relentless. I had a level of energy, excitement, enthusiasm for the college papers, and we just dealt with failure and dealt with rejection from advertisers, and I just powered through. I don't know how to explain
Yeah.
what was driving me in college, but I can tell you what drove me to build the city newspaper and raise all that money. When I came from the East Coast, from Connecticut to SMU, I was struck by the entrepreneurial spirit of Dallas, by the can-do attitude. There was an energy in this part of the country that lit me up because it was filled with possibilities and innovation and
Hmm.
very can-do kind of attitude, which has a little bit of a southern sort of flavor to it compared to the East Coast. And it was also so welcoming, like, welcome to Dallas, like, you're now part of what we are building, and we want you to feel that you're a part of something bigger than yourself. It was a very like unusually you know
Collaborative.
cultural experience, right?
Yeah.
And so the Dallas Observer, which was a local paper that was an alternative paper that I looked up to because I was doing the college papers and they
Hmm.
were the alternative city paper. They were purchased by a company out of Phoenix called New Times. And New Times was rolling up these papers, and they brought a form of journalism to their papers that they called, their owners would call this kneecap journalism. So their winning formula, their playbook was come into the city and then kneecap the politicians and build, what bleeds leads and all the stuff that you now see on the algorithms of social media. But this was in print. And I was so impacted by what happened when that paper shifted its tone
Hmm.
that I wrote a letter to the letter to the editor when I still had my college papers, thanking them for for like cynically, thank you so much for buying this paper, and then turning it into a basically nothing but blood on the covers and politics
Yeah.
and how horrible everything is. Now I know how horrible Dallas is because of you. And it was all like cynical. I got so motivated to uh you have a good enemy sometimes. I saw them as the enemy of entrepreneurship, the enemy of goodness, and the enemy of the city of Dallas. And I was like, I am going to raise money and start a paper to compete with them and to offer the market an alternative.
Hmm.
And so there was like this almost righteous purpose. I didn't know the conscious capitalism movement because it didn't exist, but I became a purpose-based business. And I believe that the reason that I continue at 55 and I feel like I'm more lit up, more inspired about the work we're doing in the world today than I ever have been. And I believe what fuels me today is purpose and
Hmm.
meaning and impact. And so that's from then to now.
See, so you start Stagen Leadership Academy,
Yep.
and how did you get people to go to it? Was it did Brett have a clientele? Did you have like from the newspaper, or I know you were associated with like YPO. Maybe just talk about those early days of starting that particular business and how you got the word out.
Well, I mean, I think this is not just my story. I think this is our story. Anyone who is able to build a successful business has to start close in,
Yeah.
right? I was in a group called Young Entrepreneurs Organization, which Mike is also a member of. It's now called EO, Entrepreneurs
Huh.
Organization. And I was fortunate to have gotten involved in that local chapter for many years when I had the newspaper, and I was on the board, and I was the chairman of the local chapter. And so I went to my buddies who had small businesses, and I said, I've sold the newspaper, and I'm going to now get into this kind of leadership culture space. Very inspired by Stephen Covey. Mike, you said, was leadership big back then? No, it was Tony Robbins, it was
Yeah.
Stephen Covey. There wasn't executive coaching. It was a very different time, and my friends were the ones who gave me the opportunity to practice and to make mistakes and to learn. And our dear friend Rick Sapio, which we lost to cancer a little over a year ago, he was the first client, and
Okay.
it's a story I've told many times. People say, well,
Oh,
how did you get your first client? I went to Rick and said, Rick, you have this mutual fund company. You've got 80 employees, and we were on the board of EO together. And I said, I'm now going to start. I'm going to start with speaking. And he said, okay, well, I'll be your first client. And I said, great. He goes, what do you want? I go, I want 2 hours to do like a team building, rah, rah, Tony Robbins kind of thing. And he looked at me, he goes, okay, I'm going to give you my 80 employees for 2 hours. How much are you going to charge me? And I was super nervous. I took a
yeah.
big deep breath. Okay. And I go, how about $50? And he said, done. And so he
He's
gave
like,
me a $49 check and a dollar bill, which he signed and wrote a note on, which sits in my where I'm at home right now, but at the Leadership Academy in my office. And that was how we got into the game, John. And I did my best, and I carried the book, Jim Collins's book, Built to Last, with me
Yep.
everywhere I went. And whenever I got lost, I would go there for inspiration, and I just spoke, and then I started doing consulting, and
Hmm.
then we started building a leadership program. And I'll tell you one story with Brett that's like super funny that he was in awe of. I was able to sell. So
Yeah.
I had
You think?
there was a guy in Chicago who who was referred to me by someone who needed an event for about 100 employees, and I went and did the event. His name was Tor Solberg at Solberg International,
I know
and
Tor. Yeah,
and oh, you might
he's
know
a
him, Mike.
yeah, I know
And
Tor. Yeah.
so Tor had no idea that he was hiring a completely inexperienced
There's no
facilitator for
need for
his
him to know
his
that.
two-day retreat. Like I had no business doing this retreat. So what would happen is Brett, who was really experienced, Brett was at home in Texas. We had like landlines, okay? And I would put the group into an exercise, and then I would get to the end of my capability. I didn't know what to do. And so then I'd be like, I want everyone to now take another few minutes and debrief the experience you just had. And then I'd run over to the phone. I'd call Brett and I'd say, okay, this is what happened. What do I do? And he goes, well, then do this, this, and this. I'd run back in and I would call Brett every hour, every 30 minutes. And for 2 days, he basically told me what to do. And I was like a total puppet. I had no idea. And he was like laughing. He goes, you are so willing to just take risk and just like put yourself out there. And I was like, yeah, that back to the growth. That's how I grew. And I did that for 10,000 hours. And, I'm slowly learning how to do what we do, with integrity, I hope right now. So I'm still a work in progress.
Yeah, God is not finished with any of us yet. It reminds me, I once came in after presenting to a board at like 27. No, no, it was like 24. And at the time, the guy I was renting space from is an old ad guy. He goes, Michael, I want to talk to you. You know how I know you're going to be successful? And I go, how's that, Tommy? And he goes, because you're too goddamn stupid to realize you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. And I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
That naivete, like I'll figure it out. That's a young entrepreneur. So I have some CEO questions because I feel like you've literally interacted with tens of thousands now of people running companies, and this is such a rare treat. So what's a quiet question that today's CEOs are asking but rarely saying out loud? Like
What's a
in
question that
a quiet
CEOs,
question
yeah.
that they say privately, but they rarely say out loud, even to their teams.
Yeah, that's a big question. I think that one of the questions that many of the CEOs that I'm interacting with right now, and this is just that this goes back to the pattern that doesn't change, is and back to the experience of taking risk and just putting ourselves out there, is CEOs and leaders, not just CEOs, often feel like they should know the answer. And the idea of saying to their own employees, I actually don't know, is terrifying.
Yeah.
And so instead of being authentic and transparent in the right setting, okay, vulnerability in the right setting can be a strength, vulnerable strength. Like, I don't know. Vulnerability and transparency can also be unskillful in the wrong setting, right? So people say, well, Rand, shouldn't leaders always be authentic? No. Well, why not? Well, if authenticity is defined as to just be transparent at all times, because that's authentic, I can't make payroll. Let's go back to when I had the newspaper. The lowest point of my professional career, I was 24. I'd raised $250,000, 37 investors. We published our first 6 months of newspapers. We ran out of money. I couldn't make payroll. ADP was our payroll provider. We didn't have the money. We were literally going to go, like, it's one thing to like go out of business. It's another thing to not be able to pay people who had worked. Okay. Like, that's a whole nother level of like moral dilemma. I was under my desk at 3 o'clock in the morning, crying in a ball. It was the first and only time that I was able to understand why people kill themselves. Now, I wasn't contemplating killing myself, but I was at such a low point that I was like, this is what it must feel like. Like, that's how intense this was.
So what did you do?
And the only reason that payroll got made is because ADP had a policy, which I did not know about, that when they go in to pull your payroll, if there wasn't enough payroll, they would cover the payroll and they would allow you to do that twice. And then they would go back the next week and try to pull it again. And so they were like my banker, which is why I'm like so grateful all these years later for the way they deal with small businesses. And so that story, here's why it's important about authenticity. I didn't say to my employees that morning, transparently, I can't make payroll. That would have been the transparent thing to do, right? Go to my employees and tell them that I couldn't make payroll. That would be unkind and unskillful because payroll actually did get made and they never knew about that. And we never lost a beat and we had momentum. But that's an example of where transparency isn't helpful or skillful. And then there are other times when we're with our executive team or our leadership team or with a small group, when being able to say out loud, I don't know how to solve this. I'm struggling, and inviting other people into that
Mm.
problem solving. That's where the vulnerable strength is. But vulnerability can be a weakness too. And this is
So do,
why it's sort of like if I'm working with a tennis player, you guys have heard me say this before, and he or she, and if I'm a coach, well, what do I do? Is the forehand or the backhand? Like, what's the better? It's like, where's the ball? Like, we want to have the range of motion as a leader to be able to go where the situation is. And sometimes we armor up because we don't want to scare people or be ineffective in our leadership. And sometimes we need to take the armor down and just be real. But what happens is, in my experience with leaders, they they assume they always need to be armored, and
mm,
that's
Yeah.
not the case. That's not the case.
Hmm. What about heroics? So I know we've talked about how heroics very rarely scales from a leadership point of view. And
mm,
uh, you're a hero. You're a rainmaker. You save the day.
Yep.
You go kill the whale and bring it back. And then the whales get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you realize I can't kill any more whales. So you've had your own struggle, I know, with being the hero of your business. What have you learned? What would you tell someone who's like this charismatic founder that wants to grow their business bigger and bigger and bigger? What do you tell them from
Well,
your
I'll
own
actually go back
experience?
to the painful conversations John used to have with me, and he would sit with me and say, slalom started. We started in '99 at Stagen. You guys started 4 years later. What year did you start?
2001.
Yeah. So you guys started after us, and we're now about maybe 75, 80 people, and you guys are 10,000 plus.
You're just a jerk, John.
Okay. Okay. But wait, this gets
What's
better.
going on, Rand? Welcome to
This gets
Maddock.
better.
How many
It
people
was
do you have?
kind. It was meant to be kind.
It was kind. It was actually, it was a John, you were a really important teacher to me. You didn't realize it because you weren't being, you weren't being persecuting. You
No.
said to me, Rand, this is when we had like 15 employees.
Yeah.
You said, Rand, how are you doing it? And I go, what do you mean? And you go, you and your team have created a world-class curriculum and technology and a methodology, and yet you're a boutique. That we were a boutique, and you're staying a boutique. Like, how do you rationalize not bringing more of this to the world because it's really good? Like, you were
Yeah.
complimenting me, and you were in awe that I was actually, for all intents and purposes, playing small.
Hmm.
And here's why, in retrospect, I was playing small. I was afraid. All
Mm,
right. And here's what I was afraid of. I was afraid that if we were to grow beyond the boutique that I heroically could control, that we would become really big and soulless, that we would
yeah.
lose our soul on the journey. And so I had this calculus in my mind that I was unconscious, that if I were a restaurant and the two of you were my favorite you're my favorite customers. You love the restaurant. You would come in all the time, and you said, Rand, you got the best restaurant in Seattle, the best restaurant in Chicago, wherever we live. And I've been like named the best restaurant in town year after year after year, and I got a waiting list. You're like, you should open up not just two, but three, but four. You could open up I'll even give you the money, open up a chain all over the country. And I had this assumption, which I was wrong, but at the time, that if I were to grow Stagen as a business, that we would become really big and we would be Olive Garden.
Mm,
And if I could be Olive Garden or the hippest, coolest restaurant in Seattle that had a line out the door, I'd rather stay small as opposed to losing my soul and selling my soul. That was a limiting belief
mm,
that I did not get on the other side of. Back to the hero question, until about 6 years ago, our chairman, Rick Voren, and some inner circle clients staged, for all intents and purposes, an intervention.
Hmm.
And the intervention was, Rand, we love you. We love your passion. We love how much you care about the business. But the business is bigger than you now. And you have a talented group of people who've been with you for many years. It's time to let go. And it's time to stop keeping this governor on this business. And I basically, in control of the business, I said, no, too bad. I'm not going to do that.
I'm
And
sure there was swearing.
there
I
was a
just have
lot
a
of F
feeling.
bombs, a lot of swearing, and a lot of emotion, a lot of crying. It was like a full on intervention. And they didn't stop. Christopher Crow was a dear friend and a client to this day. He was part of it. And he was like, they were just hammering me for months. And I finally realized that I had assumed that the mojo, the magic, the thing that made us special wasn't actually about me or the heroics, but rather it was about a set of principles. When I heard Elon Musk talk about first principles, I'm like, what's that? And then I heard someone talk about design thinking. I was like, what's that? And I just got enough context to be able to say, what if we reverse engineered our mojo? And what if we stripped it down to first principles? Could we actually write down on a piece of paper, these are the boundary conditions of our product and service offerings? And if I could do that, I wouldn't need to be the heroic protector anymore. I could actually build a team around me that was able to operate off of a set of principles, not off of the direction from the heroic founder, which is what we've done. And
Hmm.
as a result, we took the governor off and we are in a growth mode. The businesses in the last 4 years has doubled in revenue and doubled in impact, more than doubled in impact. And we're on our way to another doubling. And we, for the first time in the history of the business since 1999, are actually on a growth trajectory. The very trajectory that John 15 years ago was like, why aren't you on a growth trajectory? Because we are liberated by design thinking and design principles. And it's
Okay.
no longer about the heroics.
So where are you in the
Love that.
7-step process personally? Like
Where am
just
I?
so
Where?
in the 7-step process, you're obviously a member now of Heroics Anonymous. I
Yes,
need
the
to
seven-step process.
where are the meetings? I'd like to come. And like, just personally, I believe you. I saw you get up in front of, hundreds of alumni of the program and say, hey, this is what we're doing now. I've
Yep.
I've had a moment, and you told that story, which is amazing. But what you just said, we're all working on ourselves. What are you still working on? Like how do you still get in your own way as a leader? I guess as someone who has the ability to get on stage, grab a mic, and take over a room, where are you?
Are you asking yourself this question or are you asking me this
All
question?
right, don't
I think it's
judo
pretty
me,
clear.
guys.
Yeah,
Don't hold on a
that's
second.
pretty
I
clear.
just want you get I promise myself.
Oh, Stagen black belt.
That's right. John, where's yours? All right.
John
I
did not get a black belt, but he did get a diploma. Okay. So, okay.
it is the I feel compelled to give an infomercial for Rand at this point. I looked at my LinkedIn account this morning and we have a couple hundred connections. And I started looking at those connections, and they are some of the best people I know.
Mm.
And Rand, your company has gone from uh, working on individual leaders to working on teams. So if you are listening to this and you are running a $500 million company scaling to $1 billion, or $1 billion organization scaling to 2 billion, I could not endorse what Rand is doing for those leaders and those leadership teams and the leadership teams under those leaders more. You are having such an incredible impact. I mean, your legacy is secure. Just by the people I know, your memory is going to be such a blessing because you've had that impact. I hope you take a moment once in a while, to notice that the ripples in the pool are coming back to you, more.
And I want to thank you for that, really thoughtful reflection on the impact of our work, our team's work, and our principles. And thank you, John, for all of the support that Slalom has given us and the learning we've gotten at working with the size of the business that you've become, kind of,
Mhm.
being in the journey with you as you've scaled and grown. And to Mike's point, we continue to work with lots of organizations that are sort of lower mid-market. They might be 50 employees, they might be 200 employees. And now we're working with a lot more businesses that are 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 employees. And these are all private businesses. They have indefinite time horizons. We don't work with private equity or public companies because the nature of what the three of us care about, which is true, sustaining,
Mhm.
practice-based change, it requires one thing: time. And
Mhm.
when you only have 3 months or an artificial private equity 3 years, it's really, really hard, even for well-intentioned people, to play the long game. And we're playing the
Mhm.
long game. And it's really not even about legacy for me or for us. We really do operate with this orientation that it's not the legacy that we're trying to have; it's the contribution that we're trying to make in partnership with our clients to just to, and I know it's a cliche, but just to contribute in some way, and to leave this place a little bit better. And we believe that development, leadership development, adult development, organizational development, disc development, we believe that that's the key. This is going to be crazy to say it, to all of our problems on planet Earth. The hyperpolarization, what's going on with, in Minneapolis right now, what's going on in the Middle East, the solution, so like James Carville said, it's the economy stupid with Clinton. We say, it's development stupid. Why are we fighting? Because we haven't yet developed to a place where we have anything in us but the fight. Why are we not able to solve some of these the most complex and intractable problems globally? Because we haven't developed the complexity and the capacity to actually solve those yet. So, like, development, we believe, is at the core of unlocking an organization, unlocking a team, unlocking a person, but even unlocking a country and even unlocking a global marketplace. And so this is it. It's all about how can we play the game, which you guys are both big players in this game too, because you've always cared about your people and you've always seen, and I want to ask John a question. You've always seen the correlation that if you invest in your people, and it's not about Stagen, Stagen's one of the many ways you invest, but if you invest in your people and you create the conditions for them to grow and quote develop, that magical things happen. And,
Yep.
and John, a lot of your competitors that are big global companies, it's lip service. They don't really walk that. They talk it, but
Mhm.
they don't really walk it. How do you think about the role of investing in leaders and developing? How has that helped drive the economic engine and therefore the purpose of Slalom?
Well, I think the time part of that, what you said, like where organizations, if you give it enough time, that that's where you get the payback. And I think that's what happens with um, some of the people that have to do so many, like for quarterly earnings and things like that, that you do forget that the real growth, the real advancement happens over a time, over years, and whatnot. And so for us, I think that um, a lot of people that went through those programs, those immersive programs, it it was a year-long journey, but then it kept going. And then the way we had it structured where after you finished, you were then a coach
Yep.
effectively, or, basically that, like, the gift keeps on giving. And so, um, I I I think that, when I look back on it, I'd say, like, how were we, like, my why on what we started it, and again, meeting you, and I forget who else was there from your team. We were having coffee, and I'm like, I want, we have something good with our company, and a lot of it is purpose, about our culture, about our values. How do I codify it? How do I make it real? And I think I had an idea that I thought it was through leadership development that helped it endure.
Yep.
So because we invested that time, it took a lot of the goodness, a lot of the uniqueness actually of our consulting company, and then galvanized it and made it real for so many people. And Rand, I want to admit something to you, that over the last 3 years, as we struggled a bit, All services industries have struggled. I think we've gotten away from it a little bit, and we are reinvesting actually in our people now. Like we finally, it's almost like we hit rock bottom, and now we're coming emerging back out of it.
Yeah.
And the what I experienced in, I think it was 2011 when I went to Stagen, was this a little bit of this arrogance, like I don't need to change. I think I'm pretty good. You convinced me to come because leaders have to go first on leadership development, and it totally changed my mindset. And like you said, like you said at the beginning, sometimes you have to relearn stuff. And I think we as a company are relearning some of those things, that we have to invest back in our people. We have to invest and make it a time-based thing that's going to sustain. And so we're actually, after about 3 years of dabbling a little bit,
Yeah.
we're now reinvesting in it. And so, I think you just have to see that bigger picture. And then the last thing, just Mike, to your point with Rand, and just to give him a lot of props, it's like you've had tons of impact on companies, but I think you've had even more impact on the individuals, which is
Yeah.
super interesting that you're able to play at both levels there. And like me as an individual human, um, you've had such a big impact on me and my family and how I treat others. And, even sitting around with my friends, me asking them deeper questions, and them kind of be like, Dr. John, take it easy. But you've had such a big impact. And I think it is like that rock that dropped in the ocean, or in the bucket of water, and the ripples that you created because of that is just really cool. So,
Bro.
I'm living it, our people are living it, but our companies living it, and you have to invest that time, and eventually it does really pay back.
Bro.
Sorry, that was a little,
That was beautiful.
a mix of stuff there.
I was just really appreciating how I was feeling in myself, just a sense of gratitude for your attitude and your commitment. And, let's go back to 2009, 2010. Mike, you introduced me to John. I met John, I think at like an Ian Ernst and Young event or something. We met,
Mm.
shook hands, and he's like, "Hey, Mike says great things. I'd love to get you to start working with my leaders." And I'm like, "No, dude. Like, you're gonna have to do this work yourself." And you're like, "I'm busy. I don't have time to go out and like develop myself. Like, but I got leaders that would love this." Nope. And you already said it, John. Leaders go first. And here's the thing: the unit of change in any organization, any business, is the individual,
Yeah.
right? So like, if you want to, if you're going to see an organization, grow and change, you gotta create the conditions for the people in that organization to grow and change. It's all about the individuals. It starts there. And I just love how you talked about the ripple, right? And there's a wake behind all of us.
Hmm.
You had a wake, and I think it was a very positive wake, like the wake of a boat, because you modeled what it meant to go first with integrity. Like, I, John, am going to do my own work as a leader. And in doing that, that's a vulnerability move, because it's telling your people that you actually know that you got to get better, which inspires them to want to get better, which inspires them to have a wake behind them. And this becomes, you become a force multiplier
Mm.
as the leader of the business. And then every other leader becomes a force multiplier, whether it was a general manager at the Chicago office or the Atlanta office, they then become a force multiplier. And this is back to Mike's question earlier about what leaders are asking themselves, the quiet questions. But then there's the thing of, what are they not asking themselves? And this is what we see more often than anything. They're not asking themselves, how are my behaviors shaping my business in ways that are not what I want?
Mm.
This is the thing. Hey, I don't like what's going on in my business. And we're like, well, great. Well, then why don't you fix it? Well, that's why I want to hire Stagen to go and fix it. Well, you want us to go and fix your culture? Yeah, go fix our culture. We don't have collaboration. We're siloed. Go fix the collaboration. And we're like, but you're the root cause of why there's not collaboration, because you're actually the very thing that's creating the outcome that you're complaining about. So why don't you step up? If I'm talking to a guy, man up and take responsibility that you need to do your work. And public
Mm.
company CEOs do not like this conversation.
It's a hard
Okay?
conversation to be on the other side of. I've been afflicted by that conversation. Um, Rand, I'm watching the time, and we could talk all day. Are you up for some rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
All right. And before I do, you said I introduced you to John. Well, Rick Sapio introduced me to you, and I know he is one of your dearest friends. I tell my kids that if you want to know who your friends are, call them at
Mm.
3 a.m, tell them to meet you in your driveway with a shovel. And if they don't ask any questions and they're there, they're a true
That's
friend.
right.
Rick said, you should sign up for Stagen. And I didn't ask him why. I just said, okay. And I'm so grateful that, we have an angel in heaven looking down at us going, yay, right now,
Hey, we do. Yeah.
because this conversation is happening. All right. Okay. Let's see. One word you wish leaders used less.
Me.
One word you wish leaders used more.
Us.
Um, a mentor who shaped you, but not in the way he intended.
John Tobin.
And how, all right, follow up. How did how
I
did,
already told the story.
all right, okay,
He
okay.
terrorized me in that conversation, stuck with me for years, years. And
Yeah, stop being a jerk, John. I mean,
that
come
was
on, we've
really,
had this
I
conversation.
really, really appreciated the pain of that
In the
process.
South, I've recently learned the phrase is be sweet.
Yeah.
Okay. Biggest leadership myth.
That you can outsource your development by having your head of HR or chief people officer be the executive sponsor of development.
Mm.
Development has to be owned by the leader and leaders. It cannot be outsourced. And that is the biggest myth. And it's not just a myth, it's a reality that happens, unfortunately, especially in big companies, is talk to my, head of HR, talk to my people person. They own development. No, the leader of the business owns the development. It can't be outsourced. That's a myth.
Okay, you can only pick one. Legacy is built through consistency or through courage.
Legacy is built through consistency.
Okay. Fill in the blank. At the end of the day, leadership is really about.
At the end of the day, leadership is really about responsibility.
Great. Okay. Final question for Rand Stagen, mentor, friend, Yoda, entrepreneur, dad. All
Learner.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. When people
Nice.
talk about you 20 years from now, what do you hope they say you protected? And what do you hope they say you challenged?
Protected our principles, challenged comfort zones and the status quo.
Love you, Rand. Thank you.
Love you guys.
That
Thank
was
you.
great, Rand. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Really amazing.